Hello everyone, this is Midlife Music Teacher and I'm Mrs. G, and this is a video I recorded last school year all about my student learner objective that I did with my first graders, and the assessment was all around beat and rhythm. So let's take it from the top. This year I am being evaluated, and we are coming up to the end of the 2023-2024 school year. And this is the first time I've ever done a student learner objective with first grade, a concept I've noticed over the past few years my students struggle with, and that's beat versus rhythm. Because I've never done an SLO like this before, it's been an experimental kind of year. I started the school year off by collecting baseline data. And by doing that, I had to individually assess all the students, which took quite some time. For anybody that knows how our schedules run, 45 minutes once a week, that time is precious and valuable. It also has to be managed in a special way because you don't want the rest of the kids to lose it while you're individually assessing the other children. I had to be creative in collecting this data, which included demonstrating a steady beat by tapping on a chart. Here's an example of my baseline activity. This is the chart that I used and the song that I used. And each child had a turn to come up with the pointer and tap the bones to the beat. Bow, wow, wow, whose dog art thou? Little Tommy Tucker's dog, bow, wow, wow. And each student at their seat had their own copy of this bone tap chart. We were also talking about tempo, so each student that had a turn to come up to be assessed could choose their own tempo. Bow, wow, wow. And they could pick slow, medium, fast. Whose dog art thou? Little Tommy Tucker's dog, bow, wow, wow. I also gave them the direction that they had to tap each bone. What I was observing was, could they do so with a steady beat? Did they skip the beats with no word? Bow, wow, wow. Whose dog art thou? Little Tommy Tucker's dog. Bow, wow, wow. So I got a lot of that as well. And so just assessing them on how well they could tap on this chart, also giving them practice to do it with their finger on a chart that they had in their own lap was part of my baseline assessment. Demonstrating understanding of rhythms by reading rhythms and creating their own rhythms. This is an activity from Essential Elements Music Class, Grade 1, Lesson 3, called Fruitful and Foodful Rhythms. We worked on a few examples together as a class, and then students had a set of their own cards and created their own rhythms using these cards. They were allowed to either say the food, example, ice cream, apple, plum, pear, or they could do the rhythms, T, 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 ta, ta. And I assessed them on their accuracy with speaking the rhythms to a steady beat. So after the baseline data, I figured out who goes where on what tier. Then, several weeks ago, we worked towards our mid-year assessment. And for mid-year assessment, I did something a little bit more formal. We spent 3 weeks on this. I passed out the formal assessment, which was a listening assignment. This is what the worksheet looked like. I played rhythm sticks while I sang a simple song, and students had to listen for what the sticks were playing, either the steady beat or the words, because words are rhythm. For the second half of the page, I had students come up one at a time to be the leader, and they had to either play the hearts or stars or boxes or bubbles, while the rest of the students had to figure out what they played, beat or rhythm. And we took turns having leaders come up and listening for beat or rhythm. And that took 2 weeks to prepare them for the formal assessment. And then when we took the formal assessment, it pretty much took the whole class. The other thing about these kinds of assessments is when a student is absent, because it's really hard to redo the assessment for 1 or 2 kids that were absent. So most of the time, I just put an absent and that they didn't complete that part of the assessment. We're coming to the end of the year, and I feel like I need to give these kids one last formal assessment, performing beat versus rhythm and listening for beat versus rhythm. I'm trying to do this in an engaging way, and I'm just racking my brain. So yesterday on my silent drive home, I think I came up with a solution. It is 2 days later, and I've made the materials and run the game that I used for my beat versus rhythm assessment for first grade. The game went really well, and I'm very happy about it. So here's how I ran the game. The first thing we did was we established some goals, and some of the goals included doing your best, making sure you're listening, encouraging the other people on your team. Don't get upset if you get an answer wrong. You have more tries to get it right. I split the class into 4 teams: red, purple, blue, and green. And the object of the game was just to listen. Each student started on a start marker with the little footprints. I played a piece of recorded music. In this case, it was Do Re Mi from The Sound of Music. As they listened to the song, they had to listen to what I played on the rhythm sticks. In some cases, I played a steady beat. In some places, I played the melodic rhythm. They had to listen and wait. Then I'd say, ready, go, and they at the same time all had to jump to their answer. They either stood on the heart for beat or they stood on the stars for rhythm. It made the students face away from each other so they couldn't really copy each other. Each student had 3 turns up there in the front on the rug. Then they sat down and the next 4 students came up. And so I tallied up how many times they got it correct out of 3. In the game for the class, those were their points that they earned. In this case, some students had to play more than once in order to make it fair, to have an equal amount of rounds, for the teams to have an equal amount of chances at points. But it really worked out. They were very respectful to each other. They really focused on those goals. It really helped them to play the game, to talk about those goals first. And so I used this as an assessment. Did some students kind of look at each other for the answer? Actually, they didn't really. Maybe 1 or 2 out of the students, 1 or 2 rounds maybe, but I marked that on my paper for my assessment. I still gave them the point if it was correct. Really, it's all about how well they listened for beat versus rhythm. Moving forward next year when I do this assessment, I think I'll do this game assessment before I do the written one. But when I was coming up with this student learner objective at the beginning of the year, I didn't anticipate needing an extra assessment. But it turns out that's what I needed to do. I've never run this assessment before. This is only my 5th year teaching first grade like this. So moving forward, I would swap those 2 assessments, making the game one first and then the written one last. Let's end on a high note. I'll see you next time. Bye.